And we wouldn't do that to you, I promise.
So I'll coordinate next week,
Yeah,
and I'll send out a note and ask for some responses prior to the class, but
Perfect.
also maybe offer a couple ideas.
So
Yeah.
can we spitball some ideas?
Yeah, let's do that outside this class, because we'll
Right.
bring the whole class on.
let's try to get through this one, and then we'll go from there. Does that work?
Write them down as they come to you, let me know.
Yeah.
So this lesson is actually on leading change. And leading change is one of those phrases that we just hear in our lives kind of over and over and over and over. I'm sure, anybody who works in the corporate world, leading change now is, a requirement for whatever you're doing. And the reality is, one of my favorite quotes, and it's actually an anonymous quote, but it's so true. If you think about the pace of our world, this was really a great quote for me. It really helps center me when it comes to change. Change is mandatory. Growth is optional. So whether you like it or not, whether you resist it or not, whether you embrace it or not, change is going to happen. What our response to that change is where we are at choice. And so what we really want to talk about is leading change as leaders, and how do we get to be that face of change, because it's going to happen. Sometimes I hear people yearn for the good old days. Well, the good old days may have been good, and they're old. And so you can't go back, you have to go forward. And so we need to think about what our growth response is going to be to that change. So let's take a look at today's word share prayer. It is from Matthew, and it's an oldie but goodie story. But as with a lot of our word share prayers, what we're asking you to do is to take a look at a story that you may have heard, or verses that you may have read over and over again, and to look at them with new eyes. So would somebody like to read today's text?
Sure, I'll read it.
Okay.
As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him.
Okay. I'm going to ask all of us to read it together in unison. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. What I'd like you to do next is to read it individually to yourselves, and to choose one word or a short phrase, 5 words or less, that you read differently today than when you may have read this story in the past. see different?
The word immediately stuck out to me.
The word immediately. Okay. What else?
Fish for people.
Fish for people. Okay. Any more?
Follow me.
Follow me.
Not come with me, but follow me.
Okay.
In the boat, the first group were standing and casting. These guys had wealth and power. They had a boat.
Mm-hmm. Liz?
I underlined immediately also.
Immediately.
As did I.
Tom?
Not a new thing, but a new degree of thing, the audacity of it.
Okay.
Jesus
Yeah, it
says-
was
Jesus
pretty
says,
amazing.
follow me.
Yep.
And they do. It's not like, well, straighten things out, get yourself turned around, follow me, or deal with your dad, make some arrangement, then come along. Follow me. Come now. It's amazing.
You must have had some kind of charisma.
Must have.
Kevin?
Immediately.
Immediately. The words that were different for me was their father. I've always pictured the disciples leaving the boats, dropping the nets, and I really didn't think about leaving their dad. Just saying, ciao, and this is yours, you figure it out. Which was so against the traditions of the times. Families stayed together, they worked together. So the words that you saw and the words that you underline, what does it tell you about leading change?
You gotta be committed in what you're trying to do to convince other people to follow you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Got to have a level of resolve.
And you gotta pick the right people.
You have to pick the right people. Mm-hmm. And Tom, you used a great word, audacity. You got to have a little bit of bravado.
Yeah, don't be timid.
Mm-hmm. What else? John, there was something about the words that you said, fish for men. How do you think that part of the message came from a perspective of leading change?
Well, he's analogizing the idea that, okay, now you're gonna, instead of catching fish, you're gonna bring, instead of bringing fish into the boat, you're gonna bring people into the boat. And so you're saying I'm gonna teach you how to bring people along.
Yeah, he spoke to them in a language that they could already relate to. So you can have the audacity and you can have the courage of conviction and you can have this desire to want to attract people. And a big part of it is the messaging. And we've been talking about messaging all along. How do you speak to somebody in a language that they understood? They may have even heard fish and not even fish for men, but, oh, I know fishing. I could do fishing. He approached them. Jesus approached them in a language that they could understand. What else? Craig, what about the words you chose?
In the boat, signifying power status, that it doesn't matter where you are in whatever categorization people might like to put you into. Your leadership goes across all categories.
Absolutely.
Diversity of leadership.
Back to audacity, and I think we could all agree that Jesus had a luxury in knowing that he was right in his path, in a way that we may not have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so where he had audacity and he had this boldness in knowing he was right, I think what we have is courage of conviction. We believe our conviction is the right thing.
Faith.
Faith, absolutely. And so we need to run on the faith path and believe that, we've prayerfully considered something, and that, I remember when I was in high school and asking a question in my confirmation class. How do you know you're on the right path? And I remember our confirmation teacher saying, well, you can never be 100% sure you're on the right path, but if you pray about something and the path is clear for you, that's a pretty good indicator that you're heading down the right path. It's not a guarantee, but it's a pretty good indicator.
When is the path ever clear?
There are
Well,
always obstacles.
Everybody has obstacles, but some obstacles, so I think about just last week, Russ came in and said, I have nobody to help me set up for this banquet. Well, I said I would help out. Well, within 48 hours, every slot was full. So, that's a case of he hit an obstacle and then the path was clear. So whatever his approach was, going to all the Sunday school classes, however he got, within 48 hours, he went from 0 to complete. And so that's what I mean about when your path is cleared for you. It's, you don't, he may have really been questioning, what have I gotten myself into planning this huge lunch and having nobody, 0, to help me 1 week out. I'm okay.
I
I'm fully
think
set.
sometimes too, the path is clear to a point, and you just have to
Right.
trust that when you get to that point, the next step of clarity is
It
going to
is
come.
going to come. Absolutely, Beth.
And
You're
sometimes it takes that to know which fork you're going to end up going down.
right. Exactly.
Or you get to that famous tourist attraction, the leap of faith.
There you go. There you go. So let's go ahead and close our word share prayer with a quick prayer. And I'm going to also say a quick prayer for Warren. I don't know if any of you were here for the early service. Warren left the early service in an ambulance and is at Wake Med in a potential stroke situation. So.
Here in Cary, Little Lake or Big
Yeah,
Lake?
he's here in Cary. Nancy's with him now. Melinda went with him during the worship service this morning, so please keep Warren in your prayers. Okay. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here today, to continue to grow our leadership skills, to continue in our desire to be strong spiritual leaders. We ask that you bless this time as we discuss leading change. We ask especially, Lord, that you be with Warren during this time. Keep him safe. Give the doctors wisdom and knowledge to understand and properly diagnose and treat his symptoms this morning. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. So, let's look at the quote that's at the top. In times of profound change, the learners inherit the earth while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. I love this quote. This is what I tie back to the good old days. They may have been good, but they're old. And we have to move forward. And what this points to is the importance of vision. How many of you have sat through some kind of vision, mission, goals, exercise someplace, once or
Painful.
6,000
Spend hours
times?
to come up with about 15
Yeah.
words.
You want to say B or A here?
Yeah. So, what do you know about the vision?
It's absolutely crucial. So it's a visioning session is like boot camp. You have to do it.
One of my
That doesn't make it fun.
No, it's not. One of my leadership mentors told me that when you write the words for a vision statement or you go through a visioning exercise, You want whatever you write to compel someone to action. So that when you read it, you cannot just stay in the space you are. You have to do something. And I think that ties back to change is mandatory, growth is optional. How far you grow is up to you. But a good vision statement compels you to do something. You just cannot remain where you are. The next statement is absolutely vital. Your vision may not be the vision. So be mindful that a visionary leader is not the same as saying you're the only one that's got all the good ideas or all the right ideas. I think in a leadership position, it is always appropriate to say this is my vision and to couch it in that way. This is my vision, and I would like to understand what your vision is, and to be able to sync along those lines. So I don't see any problem at all with sharing what your vision is. Just be mindful that the greatest ideas come from the most unusual places, and to allow yourself that openness for the next great thing.
In those sessions, I like to think of the person who is in the leadership of a vision session as being the one who provokes others to have ideas.
Yes.
And I use that word intentionally, provoke.
Mm-hmm.
You're not soliciting, all the soft words. You're really trying to get them to do something.
Yeah, and you really want them to challenge you. A good vision stands up to great challenge. So you want people to go back and challenge you and challenge the accepted norms. Challenge my thoughts and ideas. So I like the word provoke. I think that's a very, very strong and appropriate statement. So I'm going to let you, as part of your journaling, answer the question, do you think of yourself as a visionary leader? What I'd like to do is just get a real quick read of the class. What are some ways that you have successfully communicated vision in the past?
Can I ask a question before you
Yes.
start that? How do you define a visionary leader?
Well, if you look at being able to see the future and to see it in the context of both the past and the present. Sometimes we tend to tunnel our vision in any one of those states. So we tunnel towards the past, or we use that mirror reflective view. I long for the good old days. Sometimes we tunnel in the present, which is, everything is going so well right now, why are we doing this? And then there's some people who tunnel into the future and want to radically alter the world without ever thinking of what is the path to get there. So a visionary leader is someone who can kind of pull all three states and kind of pull a group through or pull an activity through to that future state. As somebody in the corporate world, I get frustrated when they say, okay, 5 years from now, I want to be here. And my first question as a leadership consultant is always, great, how are you going to get there? And the answer is, I have no idea. Well, it's lovely to have that 5-year goal, but you need to be able to pull where you've been, where you are today, and what it's going to take, and be able to pull all of that through. So that's kind of the long version of that answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been able to get in the latter half of the 20th century with everybody going to business schools and defining all this stuff is you can break down the stovepipes between different types of leadership, like church leadership, business leadership, military leadership, and you can sort of mishmash all these terms across those styles. So now we have to reach into our business buzzword bucket and come up with, you have to understand the as-is state and the to-be state, and to define the vision you have to say, what is another big buzzword, desired end state? So where is the castle on the hill at the end of the rainbow? And do we all agree that the yellow brick road our vision is that yellow brick road kind of takes us there? And that's what you're asking. How do you do that? Because so many people don't. One person, their little thought bubble has a cloud, the other person has a tree, the other in the room.
Right.
And so you have to get everybody with their thought bubbles all showing the same picture from the Wizard of Oz, of the wizard's castle on the hill and the yellow brick road that's going there. And that's the painful thing that you're trying to squeeze into 15 words.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how have you tried to communicate, what are some methods that you've used to communicate vision in the past that have worked well for you?
I use simple terms,
Yes, yes.
succinct language.
And I'm going to go back to Fish for Men. Use language that people can already relate to. Speak to them in messaging that they are already using. I remember, Kevin, when you did the very first word in action around the community garden, and you tied it to earth care in general, and you tied it to what we were going to do with the garden. And I very, very much remember how compelling for me, who has 2 black thumbs and black toes, and you figured out I have a very difficult time keeping any living
Black
plant.
is good though. There's lots of
Alive.
organic material in black, and it makes things grow green.
That's right, that's right.
I really struggle with growing food and plants and all of that, but was very compelling for, okay, maybe I can try this again. Maybe this is something I might want to do. So if you think about, I didn't speak the language of plants, but you were able to deliver a message that was so compelling that I thought, oh, this is a really cool idea. And no, I haven't gotten my hands out in the garden yet.
That's where I was going.
And,
Follow me.
yeah. And I just remember walking away thinking, if you've got any kind of tendency towards growing things, how could you not have listened to this message and jumped on board? Because it was a very, very compelling, you were very compelling in your vision about what we were going to do with the garden, which I thought was very, very cool.
And even that didn't work.
Well,
I mean, it did, but when you think about all the people who haven't responded or haven't done anything.
True. And that's an easy one because it's visual and you can taste the produce, right? And that's an easy mission, I would think. So.
Well, but I wouldn't say it hasn't worked. I think the community garden has been very, very, very successful.
It has.
I think what we need to think about, Colleen, is not that you can have the most compelling vision in the universe and still not everyone's going to jump on board because it doesn't speak to them. When you think about church congregations, if you think about a small congregation, a medium-sized congregation, and a large congregation, there are pros and cons and pluses and minuses to the size of a population. One of the benefits that we have as a large congregation is if gardening is not my thing, I can be fully supportive of the efforts of the garden. And I can go look for something that is my thing. So, let's be very mindful about calling something a success or it did work or it didn't work. Because I think the community garden has been extremely
That was not
successful.
my point.
Yeah.
My
Okay.
point was that you have all these people that you just said, should have been touched and should have been moved by this message. And okay, so I'm not a gardener, but I want to feed the hungry. I'm not a gardener, but I want my child to learn how to garden. I'm not a gardener, but I want to get involved somehow and I need some fresh air. I mean, there are all these different reasons why I should do that, and still there are 1,000 people in the Kirk, and only a small handful of them really answered that call. And I guess the point was not that, I mean, obviously, I think the garden is extremely successful. I mean, I think you've done a fabulous job. It just brings us back to the same issue of there are just so many people that no matter how we present a message to them, we're still not moving them to get involved. And that's the frustration I know that.
Yeah, I would go back to Victoria's point, and I think we don't give this congregation as much credit as is due for as many places as people are involved.
True.
We just don't see it.
That's true.
What you don't see is, if you're passionate about gardening, you're gonna invest a certain amount of time, in this case, a large amount of time. If you're passionate about Guatemala, you're gonna invest a certain amount of time, a large amount of time. You're not gonna have the same people doing those things. Now you start to look around and say, how many of those do we have started? We have a boatload
That's right.
of those things started, requiring a lot of dedication, sometimes in public, sometimes in private. We don't see the private contributions of folks like Sylvia at Stop Hunger Now. Nobody saw what she did because she wasn't there all day.
But what she did was massive.
Yeah.
And what Sylvia has done every year for Stop Hunger Now is massive. And for example, where you just said, I have a passion about feeding the hungry, it may not be in working in the garden, but it is for me about my family always being involved in WIN every single time we do WIN. And so that's where we step in. We always do a dinner. That is our thing. So I think that's what we need to be mindful of is, like I said, the benefits of a large congregation is that we have that opportunity. I remember when we took the kids, the Hope Bringers, to Augusta last year, and we went to this tiny little church, and literally has 50 members. And once a month, they do this congregational dinner, and they moved it to have it be the Sunday that, they always do the third Sunday, we were there the second Sunday, they moved it to the second Sunday. And I will tell you, for 50 people, we could have fed 500, 5,000. I mean, there was more food at this dinner, and they are, and it's one of their big things. So everybody brings something, and they actually have take-home boxes. That's a big part of their culture, of their church culture, is everybody brings enough to feed 20 people, and you take home enough food to feed your family for the rest of the week. And, you know, sometimes I think about our potlucks, and we have over 1,000 members, and 200 people show up. At this church, because of their size, one of the advantages is that every member, every 50 people that goes to that congregation is at that dinner because they have that small thing. So I think that we need to look at also size dynamics and what advantages we have of being a large congregation and what disadvantages we have of being a large congregation where we may not see everybody doing everything. The key is we have more opportunity, we have a broader range of opportunities.
And to your point, I don't think we advertise what needs we do have well enough. And I love the yellow piece of paper last Sunday that Rena put together, and about these are specific tasks that we need to fill for the immediate needs. And I'd like to see a lot more of that kind of thing.
And I don't think people understand that it's the same dozen or 2 dozen or 4 dozen people. I mean, when I sent out emails last summer to try and get people to come and do refreshments on the patio, there were multiple, I mean, I knew all the names because they're the same names that you see over and over again, and these are the same, you know, maybe 100 people who are doing, what, 80% of the bulk of the work of the
But
church?
that's true, and
Always.
Tom can tell you, that's true in any volunteer organization. To me, it's one of the great conundrums of life, of comforting the afflicted by afflicting the comfortable. And how do you afflict enough comfortable people at any given moment to get them passionate about doing this one short-term thing that comforts the
But,
afflicted?
you know, a few ideas that came out of what you said, obviously. How do we get more people involved at deeper levels? So it's all about a journey and increasing people's steps along the journey. And the second is publicizing the things we do. The thought that went through my head is, what if Mission took on itself capturing in video every single thing they do? And
The
at
mission
end of
fair
the
is
year-
great.
Mission
The
fair,
mission
yeah.
fair was great
At
last
the end
year.
of the year, say, here's what the Kirk has done in Mission in a 5-minute segment. That's amazingly powerful. I was thinking about ASP,
That would be great for stewardship.
the people
Absolutely.
who deliver a week of their lives fixing up homes. That's tremendous gift. And we don't spend a lot of time on that. We
Right.
just assume it'll happen.
So
And
what is our vision for this class, for affecting change, We talked about ideas for next week. Mine was application of everything we've talked about. And so that's a little preview of what I'll send you. So what is our vision for what we want to do with this class?
Well, what I can tell you is that when Craig and Mel and I sat down and we talked about the vision for this class, the vision we had come up with was to better equip leaders in the Kirk by providing them practical skills with a spiritual bent to understand as we make this transition to ministry teams, to have them feel more comfortable in their roles as ministry team leaders. And you can add or subtract. But that was, that was our mindfulness about what we wanted to accomplish in this session. With the long-term vision of being, at some point in the future, every member of the Kirk having gone through this so that we could encapsulate the vision that you lead from whatever chair you sit. So this was a pilot to see, really to flesh out the materials, to flesh out response and where we might go. But our goal with this course is at some point in the future, just as you, when you join the Kirk, you go to exploring the Kirk, that this is part of the curriculum going forward. That in a nutshell, I think is what we wanted to do. So, and as with everything, you have to start with a pilot, and you have to get feedback and kind of fold in the feedback and figure out what's next.
Let me come at the question in a slightly different way. The most important thing I ever learned about public speaking was from a professional motivational speaker. And he said, a good presentation is a transfer of energy. Information is secondary. He said, if you don't transfer energy, the information won't go anywhere. And so when we talk about being a visionary leader, where I am now, what I am attempting to do is put energy into the organization. It has a good mission statement. It has a good vision statement. It has a long and mostly successful history. It's a stressed, it is a division of a very stressed organization right now. But certain things are said. I don't have to walk in there and come up with a new vision because the one that's there is quite good. We're going to protect retirement benefits for state educator retirees. We're going to protect their health care benefits. And the third, and the idealistic and altruistic end of it is, we're going to try to motivate them to stay active in their communities even though they're retired, and continue to build up their communities and to continue to be professionals and continue to be educators even though they're not necessarily all still in the classroom, though some of them are as substitutes. So I don't have to go in there and promote a vision. Let me get down to cases to go to your point. How? Well, something I'm doing now, I am trying to put energy into my staff, and it's not that they're lazy and lack energy, they don't. But I am trying to model energy. I have said I want the phone answered on the second ring, no later. I told them we needed to clean up the office, not because I'm a neatness freak, but because what are all these papers lying around? What's in them? Why aren't they organized? Why don't we know what's in them and know where they belong? It's a sloppiness that's really quite literal. It's not a situation of someone who has stacks and stacks of papers and knows exactly where everything is and can't get in them. It's just a mess. So I modeled energy by picking up my own area, cleaning off my own desk and the areas around my own desk, and it was remarked on because we're all in one room about the size of this room. There are 3 of us and sometimes 4 of us working in that one space. And so it was noticed. I told them I wanted the area cleaned up, not because I was a neatness freak, but because I wanted things better organized. And they started to pick up and organize their spaces. And so I think part of visioning is bringing energy to the vision, saying that I think energy is part of the vision. I don't have to rewrite the vision statement. What we need is more impetus to fulfill it.
I think another key point there is that you actually were in the trenches. You can't just have a visionary expounding their vision. They have to model it, like you said. That's part of the interview.
And it is a great lead to the next part, being an agent of change. And look at the quote from Gandhi. You must be the change you wish in the world. One of the things about leaders is leaders get to model the behaviors that they want to see in their folks. So if it was remarked to you, Tom, that, hey, your space got cleaned up, you know, this is a better way to be, you modeled that behavior that you wanted to see without even having to tell them, I want you to clean your stuff up. And so if you look at how you can help people change, you can help them change in 4 ways that we've listed here. One is behaviors, okay? So if you model the behaviors that you would like to see, I always say you want to build a picture of what good looks like. So when somebody, and I think about this, I really put this in motion with Grace in her ballet training. Ballet instructors, when they make corrections, all do it differently. Some ballet instructors stand at the front of the classroom, and if you've ever seen a ballet studio, there's a wall of mirrors. The reason that there's a wall of mirrors is not because ballet dancers are vain, although some are. It is really so that as a ballet student makes a correction, they actually can look in the mirror and see themselves through that correction. Because the correction needs to be forever. It is correct. When a ballet instructor, especially a master teacher, gives a correction, they expect to give it one time, and you need to figure it out and make it work. They don't like to give corrections more than once. And so the mirror is there so that the student can see the evolution of the correction. Grace continues to struggle with ballet instructors who tell her, your tendu is not pointed enough. Your pirouette is not on your strong leg enough. If they just tell her what to do. Whereas some ballet instructors will come over and physically move her shoulders or lift her arm to the right level. And then she has this picture in her head of what good looks like. Then she can correct whatever the movement is, because, you know, it's one thing for your teacher to hold your arm this way, and then you've got to kind of maintain that angle. So for somebody to say, raise your arm another 5 degrees, she can't picture that. If somebody physically moves her, she's like, oh, I got it. And I can see the working in her brain of how fast she can make those corrections when she is physically moved. And so we actually have started leaning towards master classes where we already know that the teacher moves you. But so you want to create a picture of what good looks like. And you can do that through behaviors, through your ideas, through really having people understand the mission, and through your own personal change. When you model that you are open and adaptive to change, when you embrace that part of growth is optional, from the change is mandatory, growth is optional phrase, when you embrace that, it helps other people to see, yeah, we really do have to grow. So the 4 of those things help you to model what good looks like and create that picture for the folks that you're working with, for the folks that you're leading. And, you know, sometimes we get kind of lost in the forest and we don't really know where this is all heading. So you see the quote from Alice in Wonderland, where the caterpillar says, who are you? And Alice says, I hardly know, sir, just at the present. Alice replied rather shyly, at least I knew who I was when I got up this morning, but but I think I must have changed several times since then. Part of leading change is that you will go through these states where sometimes you have to go back and say, okay, I'm a little confused. Where are we headed? What are we doing? And so you may need to provide that clarity for yourself so that you can then provide the clarity for those that you're leading. And that's okay. Sometimes when we get caught in those situations, we have a tendency in our thinking to think, okay, the change didn't work. No, the change didn't work. We're just kind of a little bit lost in the forest, and we need the signs, and not, going back to the Alice in Wonderland analogy, not the one where the tree has the signs that says this way, this way, this way, this, where it's got all of the different directions. We just need to kind of get clear on the path again. And that's okay. Just take a pause and do that leadership reassessment. Where were we? Where are we today? Where are we going? And how to pull through from there. So, what are some changes that you would like to lead at the Kirk? We're just going to answer that one of those three. The other two you can use for self-reflection. What are some changes that you would like to lead at the Kirk?
I don't know that I think this is a terrific congregation, but it's like Colleen was saying, how do you expand the base of people that are contributing so you have many hands making lighter work and you're not burning out I apologize for using this term. I learned this years ago when I was a Coast Guard guy, and we were a big chunk of the New Orleans Rugby Club. A Coast Guard friend of mine used the term SFGs. Same guys who do everything in the club. And he was right. And I've said this to my daughters. I've said, when you grow up, be an SFG in the organizations that you're in. Don't just show up. And that's the problem, is how do you expand the base of those people who do everything, and so that you can keep things going. And the thing that strikes me here is, another thing I heard in the Coast Guard is, the Coast Guard said this, is that about change, it said, WIIFM, what's in it for me? Is people won't do things unless they're saying, what's in it for me? And it's not in their self-interest. And to me, I think that's really a spiritual journey, is how do you get over that hump of, it happened to me last year on ASP, when I was sleeping on an air mattress on a floor in a Methodist church in East Tennessee, and I was going, this is great. This is better than staying at a 5-star hotel in the Caribbean, because I really feel like I'm doing something. I'm spending a week. This is vacation. I'm so happy doing this. And that, to me, was the moment of what's in it for me, it's so deep, you get past that spiritual, okay, I could be laying by the pool with a paper umbrella drink next to me. No, I'm putting a roof on somebody's house when last week it was raining inside their house.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so let's look at resistance to change. Because actually, a real scary thought about change, only 11% of change efforts that are introduced in any given environment actually succeed. Even when the situation is so bleak where everybody agrees that they need to change, still 11%. And so what you see, some of the reasons people are afraid of change. They would rather have things be miserable than take that journey through leap of faith to try to make things better. So people will actually choose discomfort or misery if they cannot see a clear path to success. And so that leap of faith becomes a big part of it. The second one is they don't understand why they're changing. So for some people, there needs to be some real pain associated with the status quo. Okay? They would rather not do the work if it doesn't make sense to them why they need to do the work. So they actually have to have some kind of pain point to get them, or a burning platform, something that's going to indicate to them that if you don't move, whatever ground you think is secure that you're standing on is going to burn up. And that's what really finally compels them to move. And the third one is exactly what John said. If it's not in their self-interest, they're going to resist it. So you always need to get to, in your visioning, what's in it for me? Why are we doing this? Okay? So even if you are super energized about change, it's really important to keep in mind, do not be surprised when you see that resistance. Okay? You need to kind of expect it. Because otherwise you're just going to pull yourself down and start questioning your ability to lead through the change. So don't be surprised when there's resistance, because you're going to get it. If only 11% of the time our change endeavors actually successful, that means, 89% of the time somebody's going to be pushing back
I want
hard.
to quickly interject something Craig said a few weeks ago about in an environment where people, it's not necessarily resistance, it's feeling that their capability is neglected.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you get into a situation where somebody feels like the direction of the group is going away from a place where they might be able to contribute, it's trying to bring them along so that you're making them realize, no, we're not leaving you and your group's capability out of this. We
Right.
need you. So just let them express that, right? Am I correctly characterizing that?
Yeah.
And that you'll definitely be part of this and be a key contributor, even though at this moment you're not thinking that.
Right, and that's part of what we got on the next page. So the other things is, don't personalize it. If someone's resisting change, it doesn't mean they're resisting you. You got to keep the it separated from the you. And that's hard to do sometimes. When you call somebody and you ask them directly, will you help me? And they say no. We can take that as take that personally, because they told you personally no. Okay? But try to separate the it from the you. And sometimes if the change is large enough, you need to allow people time to grieve what they perceive as a loss. Okay? That's where you hear some of those, I long for the good old days. Those people haven't had the right space to grieve what they perceive to be as a loss. Okay? Be willing to repeat yourself. Okay? How many times did Jesus have to say the same thing over and over and over again before, some people got it and some people still didn't get it? So we can't expect to have a better score than he does about saying things one time and thinking everyone's going to jump on board.
I think that's key, because if you'll turn people off as a leader if you seem a little irritable or a little prickly. Where like, I told you that.
Yeah.
What else do you need to know? Can't do that. It's like you might as well just punch them in the face.
Yep. So we need to be patient. The next one I really, really would like you to underline. Engaging resistance is a big part of being a servant leader. Okay? So where you may have that resistance and you may go home and go, why doesn't this person get it? Just switch your thinking a little bit about from why don't they get it to what can I do to support them so that they can get it. Okay? Really put yourself in the place of a servant. What can I do or change to support that person so they really can get it? Instead of our natural tendency, which is, man, why doesn't this person get it? Because it's easy for us to go there. It's harder to say, how can I change my message, my information, access, all of those things to allow somebody to get it. And then the last one, which John mentioned, which was really important, you need to help people find themselves in the change. So you need to make sure that they understand, yes, there is still a space for you in this new whatever it is that's new. In fact, we want your creativity, we want your energy, we want your abilities in this new space. So really helping people find their place in this new world, whatever the world is, whatever the realm is. So, last question, because we're about 4 minutes over, so just real quick, pop out a couple of answers. What's the hardest part when people resist you? What's the hardest thing for you when people resist you?
Second guessing yourself.
Second guessing yourself. Yeah, what did I do wrong?
Taking it
Am I on the right
personally.
track? Yeah.
Taking it personally. Yeah, by the way, that
Learning.
list of how to avoid, how to feel good through resistance, none of those are easy.
Yeah. No.
None of them are easy. They're difficult.
So there's nothing here about, we talked, I think, was it last week about mentorship? There's nothing in the list here about checking in with your sponsor, with your management team, with your mentor, about when you get the resistance and using that to help you get through that. Is that excluded on purpose, or is that?
No, that's not being mindful, so that's a great one to add to the list. Yeah, if you hit that resistance, work with your mentor on it. Absolutely. No, that's a great one to add. Definitely. So for your journal, it's actually asking you to we're asking you to reread what we read this morning for Word Share Prayer, and just to ask yourself, what is your honest response to God when He asks you to follow Him? That's for your own enlightenment. And write out a dialogue between you and God about a conversation you've had lately when you've been asked to drop everything and follow me. So would somebody like to close this in prayer?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Dear Lord, thank you for many blessings. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be here together and to think together and reason together and seek your spirit in what we do and how we lead. For this and much more, we thank you in Jesus' name.
Okay, so Craig's going to put out a poll for topics for next week. And we got yours, Kev.
I got
Good.
This is great, thank you.